the next time you're gonna tell them to do a dark background. Because when you have a light background.
Yeah,
It's drapes,
yeah.
it's
Also, I
so
feel like
subtle.
it's
Drapes don't
like
even
very
really
loud,
do
yeah.
anything,
You know, it really doesn't make a
Get it done.
difference.
I was telling her, the only place I like to enjoy washing
Yeah,
dishes
that's-
is
that's
after.
yeah.
I think this like such a wash dishes there.
To set ourselves up.
Better than my doing
How
it.
many places did you say?
Wash the dishes and have dishes
We have the view.
Grandma, are you going to introduce me?
Do you want me to?
Yes. You're the board vice president.
No.
We don't need the mic.
I was hanging around for that moment, but. Alright. Well, welcome to our next presentation at the Stone Harbor Museum. Tonight we're going to hear a history of the Women's Civic Club, which is older than the borough, so this should be packed full of interesting things. Katie, our curator, is going to present it, so I'm sure there'll be tons of questions, so we'll let you get right to it.
Thank you. All right. Well, welcome. Thank you guys so much for coming. And for those of you who couldn't come to the talk in the spring, this is a little bit of a different version, but it's the same general honoring of the Women's Civic Club because you guys were awarded a Vintage House plaque this past year. You became part of our Vintage House program. So I am a lifelong Cape May County resident and 12th generation local, but this is only my second summer telling stories at the Stone Harbor Museum. So if I talk a little fast, I apologize. You go like this. Tell me to slow down. Totally acceptable. And honestly, getting to research the Women's Civic Club has been like one of the best parts of my year. I've learned so much really cool stuff about what the women have done for the town and how over 110 years, I guess, what is it, 113 years, how much impact they've had on the town as a whole. And I did think that this whole hour was going to be, or this whole talk, not an hour, this whole talk was going to be about Marie Van Thyn. She was she was the founder of the Women's Civic Club. She's pictured here in the white dress with the apron. The first thing to know about her was that she was no summer lady of leisure. She was a working woman, a lifelong single woman, which was not common in her day. It was called Van Thyn's General Store. And she went by ML so that people wouldn't know that she was a woman proprietor of the general store. But during the day, her full-time job was she was the head nurse at Philadelphia General Hospital. Before she was the head nurse at Philadelphia General, she lived in the Midwest and she published, I found so many articles by her teaching other women how to nurse. She worked at the education, I think it was in Iowa. She worked at the nursing program there and then came home to help her family. Her dad also lived with her in Avalon. His name was Julian, and this is 1911. Her family were among the very first on 7 Mile Beach. Her father had worked in Philadelphia until coal dust grew into his lungs, and in the early 1900s, he moved the family down to Avalon to recover. This was a brand new place then. There's an article in 1897 that mentions the Van Thyns living here and how they're business owners and how the success of Avalon is due to them, which I thought was really cool. And when the road into Stone Harbor was paved in 1911, Woodrow Wilson, the governor at the time, came and he had lunch at Van Thyn's. I think is the road. Oh no, I'm sorry. The Van Thyn's. It's not where he had lunch. The Van Thyn's were at the front of the parade. This over here says stop and spend a pleasant hour, and then you can see it says tables for ladies, which was really uncommon at the time. And then later on, she moved from Avalon to 96th Street. In her facility, which is still standing today, the Van Thyn Apartments, but I think Graham, is it condos now?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's just as big and imposing down there. She had a rathskeller in the basement and rented a room to the school teacher and to the priest, which I just think is incredible that, there's Marie Van Thyn in the middle. She's got a beer hall downstairs right before Prohibition and a priest sleeping upstairs. Her family had a mischievous streak too. Her nephew AJ sold snacks on the train coming down from Avalon. He loved to talk about how the coals threw off of it kept setting the brush on fire so often that the borough finally sued the railroad to get them to stop doing it. Another family story is that AJ's future father-in-law, a boy named John Leahy, used to sneak into Marie's store at night and hide the mannequins in her closet. Just to scare her when she got home from the hospital, I'm sure, and just what she needed after coming down from Philadelphia. But don't let the beer hall and the mannequins fool you. She was one of the most serious civic figures in the county. She donated the land for the first firehouse. She was made the first overseer of the poor. And Jim Talone, one of our old presidents, a couple of years ago, he did this great project where they transcribed all of the borough notes from 1914 and from the first couple years of the borough existing. And when I was going back to add some things to the talk, I found that every single other person named was paid. Marie, who was named the overseer of the poor and indigent, so basically the town social worker, was the only one who was not paid for her work. But that did not stop her. She continued on until 1917, when she gave up being the president of the Women's Civic Club. She also was on 2 school boards. She was on the Philadelphia School Board and the Stone Harbor School Board. And she founded the club in 1913, and she led it as its first president all the way through 1917 and stayed a quiet member until 1932. She died in Philadelphia in 1949, and that's Marie Van Thyn. So that's what I thought my presentation was going to be about. But then I met up with Izzy at the clubhouse, and she gave me all of these wonderful treasures. One thing we did have at the museum in our archives that we were already keeping safe is this notebook, and it is from 1913. It is the first notes from the first meeting of the club.
Wow.
Which I won't try and read off here. I'll put it up there, which I just think is so cool. So it starts in this notebook. The cover reads, "The Women's Civic Club of Stone Harbor, 1913 to 1917. In the very first few lines, it reads, "A meeting of the ladies of Stone Harbor was held to discuss suffrage by a few who attended the meeting the week previous at the courthouse." So a handful of women had gone across to courthouse and gone to the suffrage meeting the week before, and they'd come home fired up, gathered in a parlor, and decided to start something of their own. They called it at first the Ladies Civic Club of Stone Harbor, and they formed, in their words, to take up the topics of the day and anything the ladies could suggest for the betterment of Stone Harbor. Within months, they were the Women's Civic Club. Marie was elected president, Mrs. Seaman was secretary, and dues were set at 25 cents a year. They gave themselves the club colors of blue and gold and the flower lily of the valley, and the motto, "Let us be kind," which is just the sweetest thing in the world. And the minutes close with this: "A pleasant afternoon came to a close by refreshments being served." It's the most polite, radical document I have ever read. And let me just talk to you about where they were, like the context of what was going on there. So there's a really strange history in New Jersey. Under the 1776 state constitution, any inhabitant who met the property requirement could vote, and that included women. Some widows and single women who owned property. The 1797 election law actually said he or she. For about 30 years, women voted in New Jersey, and then we were the only one of the new states where that happened. Then in 1807, in a single law, the legislature took the vote away from women and black men at once. So the women that in 1913 in the parlor had grandmothers who could remember voting and who'd lost the right to vote. And they were meeting in the gap. 2 years later, in 1950, New Jersey put suffrage to a statewide vote, and the men of the state turned it down. It would take the federal 19th Amendment in 1920, which New Jersey ratified also in 1920, to give it back for good. But they did not just wait. At every meeting, one of them stood up and they read a piece. In the first year, some of the pieces that I loved were Human Progress, The Direct Way, The Housekeeper Needs the Vote, and my favorite, What the Vote Has Done for Women in Norway. They were arming themselves with information, and then they would send each other back out with all of the arguments that they needed in their communities to say, this is why we need suffrage, in addition to taking their time to volunteer for free, no pay, to better the town, because they saw that there was a town being formed, and they wanted to be involved. So at the second meeting, after they've elected themselves, their first act was to refuse. The borough wanted to hire a paid policeman. They already had a night watchman and a justice of the peace, and this was a man named Mr. Pay. And the women, I have to read it exactly because it's so good. At the second meeting, they made Miss Treasurer, and then they sent their very first formal letter, and it was a refusal. The borough was thinking about hiring a paid policeman, Mr. Pay, and the club wrote to say, respectfully, no. In their words, he is, quote, of little, if any, use, because the town already has a justice of the peace, a constable, and a night watchman. So the first official act of the brand new club was, right after electing themselves, was to check the town budget, which, kudos, so good. And that was just the start. In the first year alone, they took a winter census. They wrote the Pennsylvania Railroad demanding express service and a telephone at the station. They gave out an award for best winter garden. They petitioned the borough, or I guess what was yet to be the borough. Yeah, the county. I think it was called a committee before, when it was the South Jersey Realty Committee before it was a borough. They petitioned the committee about the dangerous landing at 83rd Street, wrote the Board of Health about the sewage, sent letters of sympathy where they were needed, including one to Mrs. H. Gilmore, who'd lost so much in the 1914 storm. And by the spring of 1914, they had already planted 73 trees and paid $54.63 bill for them straight out of the treasury. 70 trees in 1 year on dues of $0.25. And you have to, I thought this was going to be great. This is my favorite artifact in the museum. It's a map of what Stone Harbor looked like before it was a town. The only structure in Stone Harbor is the Tatham Life Saving Station. But what you'll notice is just like so many trees. But before this, what Avalon looked like is what we looked like. They were mined for cedar later. We were mined for cedar first. And so there was no trees, and they came and they said, how can we repopulate and provide shade to the town immediately? I know that in the 50s, the Women's Civic Club is famous for the 600 trees that they planted, but they really started in their first year planting 75 trees immediately, which, amazing. This is the notation in the Morris County Chronicle in 1914 that they were applying for incorporation, and they were chosen, Van Thyn, Emma Starr, and S.E. Herbert selected the official colors in the flower of the borough, which is hydrangea, and the colors of green and gold. That's why I wore a green dress. I said one more day before it's 4th of July for the women. Okay, so I put this in here just because I wanted you to see how few trees there were. This is 1920. This is the town in 1920. You can see the bungalow colony here. You can see that it's just, the bridge is there, but there's basically just no trees, except for the 75 that the women had already planted. Great. So through the rest of the decade, a lot of the club's work was quietly holding the town together. They donated the 96th Street Pavilion off the boardwalk in 1917. There's a beautiful picture of two people sitting facing. Graham had it in his boardwalk talk last year, just on these benches in here. And this was a very well-used part of the town. They eventually ended up putting a playground right in front, again, paid for by the Women's Civic Club. They ran entertainment for young people under something that they called the Community League, and then they turned all the money over to help the volunteer fire company pay off the interest on the mortgage. They ran a daily afternoon program at the Shelter Haven Hotel. They ran a Night in Venice festival, and then they gave the proceeds of that to the fire company too. And then they built, in 1917, in addition to building this pavilion, they joined the New Jersey State Federation of Women's Clubs. And again, still were less, their dues were less than $1 a year. In the 1920s is when it first really started to pile up. In August 1922 is the first baby parade. Cecile Mills won with a ukulele. Adeline Mills came in second place with a parasol. Jane Scott, who was at the time Jane Letskis, won a silver cup for the best decorated coach. She comes back later in many ways. Other things they did in the 20s was they started the first circulating library in town on a truck in 1923. So cool. Loaded onto a truck and driven around Stone Harbor. That same year, I think this is like a really cool synchronicity thing. I actually met Izzy and got started on this talk because of the Festival of Trees. She was dropping off the museum's tree, and they wrote to the County Board of Freeholders demanding that the county courthouse be saved. And that was the first place I ever went to the Festival of Trees that you guys do now, because of its historical value in 1923. What forethought in 1923 to say, save that building, which is not even in Stone Harbor, is in Cape May Courthouse. So they did. So thank you for that. And then in 1924, the first comfort station, which was public restrooms near the waterworks. And then 1925, the first tennis courts with a plaque on it that said for public use. This is the baby parade in the 20s. Just thought it was so cute. I had to show you guys. On the boardwalk. This is 1928 baby parade. And this is only a minute long, but it's worth it, I promise. It's the 1920s. Baby parade. While the dog takes a barking break. It's so cute. So this is footage that we converted last year. Some of the other footage on the tape is regatta races, and it says 1927. So they look like they're dressed up for the baby parade to me. Yeah. And it happened on the boardwalk at the time, so I assume that's what it was. They're so cute. Okay, still 1928. One thing that was just really cool, John Barrymore in The Tempest, right at the pier. The Women's Civic Club of Stone Harbor invites you in 1928 to see John Barrymore live.
Wow.
Right? So cool. And this is, another really cool thing, a photo play before they were called movies, when they were called photo plays. Mm-hmm. They actually had photo play fundraisers, too.
Where do you see photo play?
Right here, photo play.
On the white one?
On this one. And then here, photo play cabaret with Gilda Gray, followed by dancing.
Thank you very much.
No, of course. 3 photo plays, yeah.
Photo play.
Yeah.
And I did wonder, it said 88th Street and at the Locust Inn. Was there something here called the Locust Inn? I guess there must have been in the 20s. Locust, I just immediately associate with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Well,
They had
the pier there. In 88th Street.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They had the pavilion.
The pavilion thing, that they built, yes.
They had the boardwalk went down.
The pier. Oh, yeah, this one's at 105th, yeah.
Yeah.
Wild. Just how they booked John Barrymore to come to little old Stone Harbor. Okay, anything else on this one? And then this is my favorite artifact. Look how cute. It's from 1928. It's a dance card, and it's from the 2nd annual reunion of the Women's Civic Club and the women. I think it's Women in Youth Progress. It's a secondary club of the Women's Civic Club, but it's in Philadelphia at the Rittenhouse Hotel.
Oh my gosh.
December 27th, because they met all year long. They met here for 5 months, and they met in Philly the rest of the year. Yeah, I forgot to say that, but they met all year long in people's homes in Philly, and then at a club downtown in Philadelphia. It's on one of the things that you guys will see. So 1930s, and then this 1930s is when the club started to talk about having a home of its own, and started looking into not just building things for other people, but building things for themselves. So in 1929, it officially incorporated under New Jersey law. In 1930, it bought lots 11 and 13 at 96th and the Beach for $1,000. On the 4th of July, 1933, it dedicated a second boardwalk pavilion at 88th Street, President Miriam Webb presiding. And when they were meeting at this time, where were they meeting at this time before they had a clubhouse? Do you guys know? The Yacht Club. The Yacht Club. The Yacht Club was their home. Yeah, they held their famous Tuesday card parties, their summer bazaar, and moving picture photo play benefits, where they kept a garden going at the 96th Street Bridge. They did it all out of the Yacht Club. And so in 1933, they started a welfare fund for the town with card parties, of course. And the card parties ran very happily until the state sent them a letter saying they had to stop raising money through card parties. So I'm not sure how they continued to raise money. They did. So, we don't ask. 2 more things from this stretch. They changed the bylaws in 1931 in this hilarious way. I really wish I knew what happened. They changed the bylaws that no member could resign without first paying her dues. You can't get out until you give us $1. So you could be 12 cents behind, quarter. The club's position was essentially, where do you think you're going? Once you're in, you're in. And and there is a line in the 1930s ledger where the boy in charge of shuffleboard that the Women's Civic Club planned resigned, and he solemnly turned over his profit of 15 cents. That was the level of bookkeeping that we're dealing with in all of these notebooks. It was incredible. So I want to show you what the block looked like right before they built the clubhouse. This is when they were building the pavilion. One thing I just wanted to say is the pavilion is of stucco with an asbestos roof. And as a millennial, I was like, asbestos? What's this? Although I do know it was a great building material. And again, they did make sure, the pavilions were the first time that they had the policy where anything they built, they needed to buy from local merchants. They didn't want to give their business elsewhere. So this is them just explaining why they gave the pavilion. Another thing that was great was that the benches, the way she described. Okay, the pavilion is equipped with 12 reversible benches so that people may face either the ocean or the boardwalk, because they knew that we people watch, and I really appreciate that. And 4 corner benches. The total cost of the pavilion was $1,500, which was a lot of money for them. The pavilion was dedicated on July 4th, 1933, a little after 3 months after the contract was awarded.
Down the street from my grandparents.
The one at 88th?
No, I'm reading and down there they did the audit in
Oh,
1932.
yeah.
George McDonald in Collingswood. I know that family.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I'm just reading. I was like, they live down the street with my grandmother.
I love how Philly small town everything is.
Wow.
And at this point, they were, just still very present in the town, and they were at this point getting $200 a year from the borough. Like, they had successfully started to get, money for their work from the borough, but they were doing all of the social services of the borough.
Yeah.
Children needed candy at Christmas. The Women's Civic Club did it. That was their role within the town. So this is 1926. The pavilion is built, the 96th Street Pavilion, but you can see where the Women's Civic Club sits today is gone. Is this the Nautilus, Graham?
No, that was up in the 80s.
What is this? Do you know?
I do not. I can't really.
Well, I mean, it's gone, right? Because it had to have been gone because,
1926.
yeah, 1926. But, it looks like it's on the lots that the Women's Civic owned, so that's why I was just wondering what it was.
Oh, it's a store.
Okay. And then this is 1932. It's still, the other building is still there, but it's just a little bit of a better shot of what will eventually become the Women's Civic Club. One other thing in the 30s that they did, they hosted reciprocity days that were really popular. Women from women's clubs all over came to Stone Harbor, and we hosted them here and did so much fun stuff. And then this is for me, I think this is the earliest picture of the Women's Civic Club members. We have that great picture of them doing the groundbreaking at the original Women's Civic Clubhouse, but that's 1937, and this is 1934, and this comes from the Paul Preston Davis collection, the wonderful collection that we were given 2 years ago by Paul Preston Davis. And I just love how, it's just everyday life. The bank over there in the empty lot, just says bank, but this is right after the Depression, so I'm sure everything was going up for grabs. And the little umbrellas, even looks like they have like coolers, even though I know that they probably don't. And then this is the article about the construction of the Civic Club in 1936. $5,000 was the contract for the first Civic Club. And it was given to Robert Mills, a local contractor. Graham, I thought you would think this was interesting. He bid against Gustav Miller.
Oh, there you go.
We have a talk on Gustav Miller later on in the summer. So he didn't build the Civic Club, the first one at least. So this is 1926. The town, I did forget to say that the tennis courts, the town could not afford to finish them in the 20s. So who do you think finished them? The Women's Civic Club. Yes, of course. And then they put up a sign that said, these are for the use of the public, which, chef's kiss. This is for you, we are doing this. And also, when they had this bazaar in the 1930s, in the actual notebooks, it says that after the bazaar would end, they would go down to 110th Street for a party. So after the Festival of Trees, you guys should go to 110th Street for a party at the end of the year. This is the rule that tells you everything you need to know about the club, just that they wrote that line into every single contract about every material coming from a 7 Mile Island merchant. They did slip once an order from Strawbridge and Clothier in Philadelphia, and then they got in such a squabble over unpaid fees that a secretary had to write a very firm letter about it in the 30s. But the principle held. The winning bid was $480, or $4,800, and they took a $3,600 mortgage that September to finish it. So on the very first day of 1937, they broke ground right here at 96 in the beach, just 2 blocks over. Miriam Webb had just finished 5 years as president and handed the chair to Miss Adolph Peters. It was freezing and windy, only 8 people on a bare sand lot. Councilman Thomas Gowan had the first spade. Mrs. Peters stood there as president. Remember Mrs. Peters for later. They paid the clubhouse off 5 years later, which is just incredible. Especially, right, recovering from the Depression, right about to enter into a world war. This I thought this was so cool. This is when they were building the new clubhouse. They did this drawing of the new clubhouse and the old clubhouse. So this was just what consisted of it. And this is from 1938. This was in the newspaper advertising, hey, we've built this clubhouse. Come here. You can come here. You can look out onto the ocean. You can rent it. This is for you. And always, the object of our club is to promote cleanliness, beauty, and health. I love it. Like the cleanliness, beauty, and health of Stone Harbor. And that's what they do always. And they support the Borough Council, and they promote cooperation among the women.
In the article for the junior club.
Yeah, the dances. Yeah, the dances. Ooh, the dances are so popular. And I think that they started in the dances. I think started in the 50s, but
Before my time.
no, but I thought that they started in the 50s, but this is 1938, so they had to have started in the 30s. Yeah. There's a beautiful poem in 1942 that they put in the paper to celebrate their silver anniversary, and it's a limerick. I'll put it up on the website. It was just very long. It was in rhyme, in verse, about all the things they'd done, which I just thought was so cool. They did work really hard doing stuff for the war. They rolled bandages. They the club furnished one of the day rooms, like they paid to furnish one of the rooms at Fort Dix. They sold defense bonds out of the clubhouse, and the Coast Guard men patrolling our beach got cakes, cigarettes, and a warm place to sit, courtesy of the club. And by 1948, they'd bought the other 3 lots on the block. So now they owned all 5 lots. The full footprint of 96 of the beach. Those 5 lots are going to matter enormously in a few minutes. This is what I just said, sorry. Oh, I did just note this. This was a beautiful, this is 1942 in the middle of the war. And this is the most recent president. Her name is Julia Ewell. And she's been asked to write about what her time at the club, what happened during her time at the club. And she just wrote the most beautiful things, including about 1,000,000 stars. Not the least of our responsibilities was the Young People's Organization, the YWPS, that's what that was. But where in all club history was there ever anything to compare? I shall always be grateful for the happy association with those energetic youngsters, and that they taught us more of good fellowship, resourcefulness, and community living and spirit than I had ever learned before. To those of you who served on the Pier Decoration Committee in an advisory capacity to the YWPS, do you recall the gradual but grand transformation of that huge bleak auditorium with a garden with thousands of stars in the sky, blue ceiling, and finally, after much discussion and many trials, the moon appeared up in one corner. And of course, a movable moon. That was the problem. It had to go under a cloud occasionally, or it wasn't successful from the YWPS standpoint. They're doing all of that without they have electricity, but it's not like they have like a remote control moon that they can go up, but they were just so particular, and it's just so beautiful the way that she speaks about her work with the kids. And also, let us back our fighting youth with grown-ups at home who have because all the boys were away at war in 1942. Let us back our fighting youth with grown-ups at home who have the aim to establish the dignity of free men and women everywhere with that wonderful work. Cooperation is our slogan. It's just so beautiful. And that was 1942. So the 50s, we're getting closer. The 50s were the golden years. In the early 50s, they planted 650 trees on the side streets. As you can see, the canopy starts to grow. You can see the Women's Civic Club now is built in the corner there, in the top left corner. They started art classes, but they had been at planting the trees since 1914, 70 in the first year. And so when you drive in tonight and you look at all of the shade, that's because of the Women's Civic Club. And then eventually the Women's Civic Club branched off into the Garden Club and continued to beautify, and still to this day beautifies the town for us. This is also when the antique show came into town. It began in the late 40s and it ran for 62 years. One show alone drew 662 paying visitors. They added art classes, they had a singing chorus, literature club, a tap and ballet class, and then the first flower show. The range of what these women were running was just wild. They had so many committees and so many members, hundreds of members. Yes. And in 1952, they brought back the baby parade. I don't know what made it leave, but it left. And then it came back. And guess what? Jane Letskis, there she was, back. Her daughter won first year. She came in second the first year, and then she rose to the top. Barbara Scott, 17 months, wins Baby in Pink. Later, Suzanne Mixner was in it. She's Suzanne Stanford of the borough. Jane Scott was the first borough historian and the founder of the museum. So that's why, particularly, it was exciting for me to find her in here. I just wanted to show you this. We're only going to watch a second of it. This is a 1950s baby parade. It's much more grand. But I just want you to notice how happy everyone is, how crowded it was. This is so extra. Look at this. That's all the Little Miss Stone Harbor contestants. Mm-hmm. Love it. And just the costumes were...
That was in the baby parade.
Yeah.
You were in the baby
I was
parade?
in the baby parade in the 60s.
I love
My
it.
cousin was in Little Miss Stone Harbor.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Just like incredible, like, you know, the 20s even were great, but like,
I mean,
what was your theme?
I don't even know.
Oh, if you find pictures, bring them to
I was
me.
in like one of these like decorated
Coaches.
Not even a coach, like a wagon or something.
Love it.
One of those things you pedaled. Like,
Oh yeah, but I know what you mean.
you know,
Yeah.
they had like a
Yeah, Radio Flyer makes them still.
They have
It's like
like
you put a thing on the top that
It
they can
was
push
like-
you in
it
and
was
you
like
can
a-
pedal.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you could pedal and had like a
Yeah.
It was all decorated.
Oh, well, look at that.
I have to look for the pictures.
You please do. Right?
Don't
Like
tell
just
anybody who it is.
the most elaborate.
Yeah,
Look,
that-
I mean,
they
like,
had, the
how cool.
floats they pull. Yeah.
Also, just like love Miracle on 84th Street. That's the Robinson family.
Oh my gosh.
This is again like the 50s before the rest of the country is integrated. My gosh, just I couldn't resist. It's just so intense. I was in Baby Parade in Ocean City when I was little, but I never got to see the Stone Harbor. It ended, I think, in 1992 was the last one, and I was born in 89, so if I was in it, I don't remember. That is incredible. Look at that.
Yeah.
Like, how did they do that?
And everything was done by hand.
Mhm, exactly,
They didn't
yeah.
have computers.
And also, you didn't have Pinterest
Nah.
to plan this or to give you the ideas to do this. Like, how,
Lots
this
of
is like
paper.
pure creativity.
Yeah, the crepe paper, like the rolls of it. Yeah, I remember that.
Just incredible.
Oh, that is so cool.
Fully footman, right? So that was the 1950s, and I just thought, wow, I had to show you how jubilant everyone was. And then we get to the 1960s. Her daughter, Little Miss Stone Harbor contest that grew out of the Baby Parade was all started by Lillian Ware, and who ran it until she died, and then her daughter-in-law Vicky Ware carried it until the final contest, and the mural that's in this clubhouse was painted in honor of her. So that's such a beautiful mural. So in the late decades, we come to the edge of heartbreak. There was a president named Heddle Busher, who from 1957 from 1957 to 1961, who by all account never missed a single meeting. Oh yes, this was also happening. The Hydrangea Festival appeared right before the storm. So this was 20 municipalities along the trail. I know that one year Josie was the Hydrangea Queen, Josie Rich, one of the Stone Harbor Museum. And it was just really cool to see, it just kept growing. Little Miss, the Baby Parade, then Little Miss Stone Harbor, then Miss Stone Harbor, then the Hydrangea Festival. Just so cool. So we come to Heddle Busher. She is the president for 5 years. She got the 47 new members during her time period. She had paid membership of 134 at the time, and she had the borough donation lifted from $250 to $400 a year. And in 1961, when at the end of her term, they did an inventory they must have been changing insurance or something, but it was a very well-timed inventory of the clubhouse because I know every single thing that was in the clubhouse the day that it was taken by the storm. So this is the clubhouse before it was gone. One thing that was really cool is that there was a second floor, and all summer long they had a woman who lived there and took care of the club and hosted the parties and did all of that for them. And in a couple of years it was a couple, which was cool. And this is everything
They had in there.
that they had in there. Yeah, I'll only give you a couple of them, but let's see. 2 rattan settees, 4 rattan chairs, 100 brand new folding chairs in the back room, Miss Webb's piano on the stage, Mrs. Smith Gall's just behind it, 2 glass punch bowls on the shelf. Hold that picture in your mind. New chairs, 2 pianos. 3 months later, it's all topsy-turvy. The Ash Wednesday storm. So, the Ash Wednesday storm was not a hurricane. Oftentimes people think it was a hurricane, but it was in March. And so it was a nor'easter. And that meant that the tide never left. So that my grandmother lived in Seattle at the time. She was newly married, and she said that the tide just stayed. It was the first time in her life the tide never went out. They had to leave via helicopter from Seattle, and then she had to come back. And she worked at Mercy General Hospital there. So this is an above view of what Stone Harbor looked like while the storm is still going on. We only have a couple pictures of active storm because you can see that it's still flooded. I don't believe that the Women's Civic is in this picture. I just wanted you to see how far that the bay met the water from the bay met the beach, which is just it was devastating for the town. And at the Women's Civic Club, the Atlantic came right on through the front door. So, how many of you remember? Graham, were you here for the storm?
No, but my grandparents.
No.
Through it.
Anyone? Did anyone live through the storm?
Back to Philadelphia. I was.
Oh, you were. Yeah, you would go back. Yes.
Cool,
Yeah. It is. They call it the Ash Wednesday storm. But normally people just refer to it as 62. Like when most people they say, "Oh, that happened in 62," and you don't even need to continue on with what it is. They for 5 straight high tides. Oh yeah, and I said that about my grandma, but my favorite thing is that she left all the bills. She was newly married, and they lived on a 2nd floor apartment. She left all the bills on the table, and she said she always used to say how angry she was. But she came back from the hurricane, and those bills were still there. So much was gone, but those bills were still there. And
more.
I actually didn't even know. That's the story she told me about 62 always, and it was not until after she passed that my grandfather told me that she actually was like taken in by helicopter to run the hospital in Seattle. It was like the more relevant storm. No, she was upset about those bills. So the clubhouse that these women had paid off, raised basically by hand, was lifted right off the ground, turned partly on its side, completely off its foundation, and just in time, Mrs. Winterbottom, the new president, was away on a European vacation. She learned about what happened to the clubhouse through a telegram. In the middle of that wreckage, one woman took charge who was still local and in town, and it was Hetty Bushell, who had known and had been here, and she was still local. So she comes by herself first, and then she went back and brought her husband and the mayor because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. And she says, with the help of our mayor, I rescued all of our past record books, our silver 2 large glass punch bowls, and other things we found in the debris. All are safely located at my home for use when required. Basically, they have an emergency meeting, and she says, the building has been lifted off of its foundations and turned partly sideways. The concrete foundation was completely demolished. The porch on the ocean side was destroyed with all windows and doors gone. The lounge was even worse. The entire front wall washed out. Some of the furniture was just gone. The storage room at the rear had been smashed and was open to the ocean. The floor of the meeting room was split in 2. The kitchen was a complete wreck, and even to walk into the building was dangerous. Both the mayor and the building inspector told them the same thing: it cannot be rebuilt. Tear it down before someone is hurt in it. And the club is sued. The borough offered to knock it down for free because doing it themselves would have cost the Women's Civic. Doing it themselves on their timeline would have cost the Women's Civic Club over $1,000. They let the town do it. They said yes because the Atlantic had come through the front door, and most of them weren't in town when that happened. That summer, I didn't realize this, but they nearly left the beach for good. They decided they also moved the pianos. They used one of the pianos to pay to get the other piano. Doherty, this guy of Courthouse, moved all of the things, and he took both pianos, and in order to pay for him to store the stuff for a year, they gave him the other piano so that he could sell it, which I feel like is a pretty good trade. And they, the police department ordered us not to remove for fear of collapse of the building. Like when they originally took everything out, they left the pianos, and then he had to come and take them, but they couldn't remove the pianos then because the building would have collapsed. Which, just to think about what was going on inside. I wish we had video of it. So in May of 1962, they nearly moved. They decided that season they would accept any offer of $37,000 or more, and they would give it 1 season. And if at the end of the season that they still were there and they hadn't gotten the offer that they wanted, then they would not move, because they said there's lots at 88, there's lots all over the town. Why do we have to stay here? And I think this is so interesting. They voted 6-4 in favor of selling. No one, they voted to sell, but the bid never came through. Yeah. And the people who voted to sell, I'm like, she's the savior of the building, but she also was like, let's get out of here. It was a little bit much for her. She was done. And Webb, whose mother built the first building. So interesting. So the president who built the first building, first clubhouse, was Miss Adolph Peters. The president who, when the Ocean took the clubhouse, was Miss Winterbottom. Did it just skip? Yeah, sorry. Hold on. My apologies. This is, okay, so yeah, that's later. So this is, for months on, while they're debating, they still kept going. This is the 1962 baby parade. This is the winners of the baby parade. She was dressed as Betsy Ross. So cute. So thematic. They had the antique show in another building. The only thing that didn't still hit was the dances. They said the kids did not want to dance in the school gym, which is so fair. Like, the Women's Civic Club was dark. They said the kids did not want to dance in the brightly lit school gym. And I thought, okay, that's fair to them. This is the hydrangea queen from that summer. So gorgeous. And this is not, oh, okay, this is the storm. But I just want you to see really quickly the difference in the baby parade. It's still really grand, right? It'll turn into the baby parade in 1 second. But everyone looks really like, it just is a different energy. It just felt like a different vibe.
Oh my.
You know, like it's still grand, but like everybody in the town is not as like, and because this is what, 5 months after?
Yeah.
You know? Still really cool. Just like it's just the energy is just so different. And that's why I put the 50s one in, because when I saw the 62 one, I was like, wow, this feels different to me, you know? The people are smiling still, but it's just a little bit, more down. So the summer ends. Oh, and this is the contract. They were going to pay him $20 per dance, but then the dances had to stop because the kids never came. So they got through the summer. Nobody gave a bid. And so they decided that they were going to build again. So this is what they proposed for the new building. One of my favorite things I read was that in 1963, there was a newsletter that the president put out. And she said, I know that many in the town were disappointed because we didn't go local for the builder. I had already read Tozer Kerr and was like, what do you mean you didn't go local? But I guess what she meant was Avalon. That's how many builders there were in Stone Harbor. But she said, but most of you were occupied because of the storm. So Tozer Kerr had the availability, so they did it. They signed a $40,000 mortgage. They broke ground in January, again, 1963. It was dedicated in 63, and then they paid the mortgage off in 8 years that time. So this is the groundbreaking, you can see. And then this is so cool. This woman is Miss Adolph Peters, who conceived of the first clubhouse. And this is her daughter, the most recent president. Isn't that so cool? 2 women, one family, 26 years apart. And there they were together. So cool. And I didn't know that. And then in 1963, Mrs. Winterbottom, they came into the paper and they said, they really changed their tune, right? Like I've read in the notes that they voted to sell, but not in 1963. In this grand article that you can look at when you're done, this full page, Cape May County Social News, they said many shook their heads and said it will never be done, but we did it. And they did it, and they rebuilt the clubhouse in less than a year. It was dedicated in June. The groundbreaking was in January. And those doubting Thomas had to backtrack just about a year later when the ground was broken in ceremonies for a new clubhouse. And then the second clubhouse, it just describes, from my research, you guys have remodeled it twice, I think, in like the 80s and then 2005, but it's still the same exact footprint that it was back then, which I love. And they really just like went all out with the prep. Like this is all different press from 1963. And I just recently this week found a scrapbook, and it's about this thick, and it's all 1961 to 1965 press, because they just really, they needed to pay for the house. That's the other thing. I didn't mention this, but they needed to pay to build the new clubhouse. So a lot of the press had to do with how they were having so many more fundraisers that winter. When people were already really hard hit, it still worked though, which is amazing to me. And I think that is it. So the second clubhouse is now a proud Vintage House Plaque Program member. We thank you so much for supporting the museum. And just, I wanted to again say how much there was done for the town by these women. Just innumerable things, and I'm sure there's many things that are not in the books. Some of my favorite, specifically, they would get presents for the colored children of Stone Harbor into the late 50s at Christmas, because they were of a lower socioeconomic status. So the women saw that and they went the extra mile, and over every single year did it. They, basically operated as the social services for the town for a really long time. And to me, that is beyond honorable. So this is my thank yous just to all the women whose names get left out of the history a lot of Stone Harbor, of the world, but also Stone Harbor. So these are just some names, and how just thank you to, Hedel Busher, who rescued the past, and to you guys for rescuing the past again by giving us all of these amazing artifacts back, and now we can keep them safe. and to all of the members who, whether they were giving $35 or a quarter, have made Stone Harbor and Cape May County better over the past 113 years. And if you would like, you can become a member of the Stone Harbor Museum and the Women's Civic Club by going to our website and going to the Women's Civic Club's website. And also, you can donate your pictures of you in the baby parade by emailing me.
I gotta find them.
Yes. Do you guys have any questions?
That was excellent, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you
Yes,
very
it
much.
was.
Thank you so much.
I have one. Miss Van Fine, it was her family wealthy because she owned like a lot of properties and
Yeah.
everything back in the day.
He owned a haberdashery on Market
I
Street.
was just wondering what her
Yeah.
father did.
He
because
owned a haberdashery
Okay,
on Market
okay.
Street, yeah. And I think had been in coal because his lungs were
Okay.
destroyed by coal dust. So
Okay.
maybe he had worked and then, and then did lots of, many streams of income, as the average millionaire has 6 streams of income.
Well, yeah, because I knew she worked, but still,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
to buy
no.
all these properties.
And I
yeah.
think she took care of him because he was with her here, and his death notice happens in Avalon. Like he dies
Okay.
at the Van Thyn General Store in Avalon, with the priest and the beer hall, with right there for him. All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
No, thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
course.
that was awesome.
Yeah.
Stop.